My name is Anna, and I'm 52 years old. For 25 years, Robert was my husband. A quarter of a century. We met in our late 20s, both established in our careers, looking for stability and companionship. He was a software engineer, brilliant in his field, a man of quiet intelligence and dry wit. I was a high school history teacher, passionate about my students and the past. Our early years were simple, happy. We bought a modest house, cultivated a small circle of friends, and enjoyed quiet evenings together. We were partners, equals, or so I believed. Robert was usually reserved, but with me, he opened up, shared his dreams, his fears. I felt like the only one who truly understood him, the keeper of his soul. Financially, we were a team, or at least that was the agreement. We both worked, contributed to our joint accounts, and made joint decisions about investments and large purchases. I was generally the more detail-oriented one with the budget, tracking expenses, planning for retirement. Robert was happy to let me manage the day-to-day finances, occasionally reviewing bank statements or approving a larger expense. He trusted me, and I, reciprocally, trusted him implicitly. There was no reason not to. Our lives were intertwined, our futures meticulously planned. We dreamed of retiring early, of traveling, of spending our golden years together, tending to our garden and reading by the fireplace. These weren't grand, extravagant dreams, but simple, shared aspirations that felt utterly attainable. The first subtle crack in our seemingly solid foundation appeared roughly a year and a half before everything exploded. It wasn't a sudden earthquake, but a series of tiny, almost imperceptible tremors. Robert started becoming a little more withdrawn, spending more time in his study, supposedly engrossed in complex coding projects for his work. He'd be on his phone more often, sometimes in hushed tones, claiming it was sensitive client information. He became less affectionate, less present during our evenings together. I attributed it to work stress, a new demanding project perhaps. I tried to be understanding, supportive, offering him space, making sure he had his favorite meals ready. I told myself that every relationship had its quiet periods, its phases of less overt affection. Then came the peculiar spending habits. Small at first, almost negligible. An extra charge here, a slightly higher bill there. Nothing I could pinpoint. But I was meticulous with our budget, a habit ingrained from years of careful financial planning. I noticed a slight discrepancy, a trickle of money that didn't seem to align with our usual expenses. When I questioned him, he'd offer vague explanations. I bought a new software license. I paid for a coding seminar online. Just some miscellaneous office supplies. His answers were usually quick, sometimes accompanied by a flash of irritation or a dismissive wave of the hand. Anna, don't fuss over every little penny. We're doing fine. I let it go, telling myself I was being overly cautious, perhaps even a bit neurotic. Trust, after all, meant not scrutinizing every single transaction, didn't it? The real alarm bells began to clang when the gifts started appearing. Not for me or for home. For him. Expensive new gadgets he didn't need, designer clothes uncharacteristic of his usual practical wardrobe, even a surprisingly high-end watch he suddenly started wearing. When I asked where they came from, he'd say, "A bonus from work," or "I finally decided to treat myself, darling. Haven't I earned it?" And he had. He worked hard. But something about his demeanor, the way his eyes would flicker away when he explained, made me uneasy. It was the evasiveness, the subtle defensiveness, the quick change of subject. The unease grew into a knot in my stomach that tightened with each passing week. The specific lie that shattered my world, that revealed the chasm beneath my feet, revolved around a piece of mail. It was a Tuesday, a mundane afternoon. I was sorting through the mail, a routine chore. Amongst the usual bills and junk mail, I found an envelope addressed to Robert from a bank I didn't recognize. Not our primary bank, not any of the investment firms we used. It was thick, slightly glossy, and looked like a statement. My fingers trembled as I opened it. Curiosity, or perhaps a premonition, overruled my usual respect for privacy. Inside was a credit card statement. A platinum card with a shockingly high credit limit. and a balance of over $30,000. My breath hitched. My mind reeled. We had a joint credit card, but it was a modest one, used only for shared expenses. This was entirely new, entirely separate, and entirely secret. My stomach dropped like a stone, the way it does when you step into an empty space. I scanned the transactions, my eyes widening with each line item. Expensive dinners in cities Robert hadn't supposedly visited for work. High-end jewelry purchases. Flights to places I'd never heard him mention. And then there it was, a recurring pattern of large cash advances, followed by regular, substantial transfers to an online payment platform, and multiple direct transfers to an account holder named Lila Dawson. Lila Dawson. The name echoed in my head, cold and clear. It wasn't a business contact. It wasn't a family member. It was a name I had never heard before, associated with transactions that screamed of a life entirely separate from ours. The balance of $30,000 wasn't just a number. It was a testament to a double life, a betrayal built on my trust and our shared financial security. My hands started to shake uncontrollably. I felt a wave of nausea. My mind reeled, trying to reconcile the image of the loving, quiet husband I knew with the man who had accumulated a secret debt of this magnitude, all for another woman. The betrayal wasn't just financial, it was existential. It wasn't just an affair, it was a carefully constructed deception that permeated every aspect of our shared existence. He had looked me in the eye, shared our bed, planned our future, all while systematically bleeding our finances and building a life with someone else. The initial shock quickly gave way to a cold, hard fury. Not the screaming, door-slamming kind of anger, but a deep, simmering rage that crystallized into a singular, unwavering resolve. He wanted to play dirty? He wanted to deceive? I knew how to play dirtier. I was Anna, the meticulous planner, the one who saw the details. He had underestimated me. He thought he could simply hide this, pay it off, and I would never be the wiser. He thought wrong. I didn't confront him. Not yet. The urge was overwhelming, the desire to scream, to throw the statement in his face, to demand answers. But a colder, more strategic part of my brain took over. Confrontation would give him the upper hand, allow him to lie, to manipulate, to cover his tracks.
No.
I needed proof. Irrefutable, undeniable proof that would leave him no room to maneuver. I spent the next few weeks in a state of hyper-awareness, a quiet predator stalking its prey. I meticulously documented everything. I made copies of the credit card statements. I secretly installed monitoring software on our home computer that logged his online activity, carefully looking for patterns. I checked our joint bank accounts more frequently, looking for any unusual transfers or linked accounts. I cross-referenced dates, times, locations. I noticed when he would slip out for late-night walks or early morning errands, which often coincided with the dinner or jewelry purchases on the secret card. I became a detective in my own home, piecing together the fragments of his deceitful life. The pattern of transfers to Lila Dawson became clearer. It wasn't just a one-time thing. It was regular, weekly, sometimes even daily payments, ranging from a few $100s to over $1,000. It added up to thousands upon thousands of dollars over the months. This wasn't just a casual affair. This was an investment, a financial commitment to another woman, funded by a secret debt. My money, technically, my sanity was teetering on the edge, but I pushed through, driven by a cold, relentless need for truth and retribution. The emotional toll was immense. I couldn't sleep. I lost weight. My mind was a constant whirl of calculations, strategies, and horrifying realizations. During the day, I'd teach history, discussing ancient civilizations and their betrayals, feeling a chilling resonance with my own crumbling world. At night, I'd lie beside Robert, feigning sleep, listening to his quiet breathing, a phantom presence beside me, while my mind plotted his downfall. I hated him with a depth I didn't know I possessed. The man I had loved for 25 years was a stranger, a thief, a liar. Once I had a solid dossier of evidence, I moved. My first call was to the bank that issued the secret credit card. I didn't identify myself as his wife. I simply said, "I believe I have information regarding fraudulent activity on an account with your institution. Account number X, under the name Robert Peterson." I explained that I had stumbled upon a statement, identified suspicious activity, and was concerned about a potential scam, emphasizing the large cash advances and transfers to an unknown recipient. I did not mention the other woman directly to them yet, focusing purely on the financial irregularities. The bank's fraud department was efficient. They opened an investigation. Then I dropped my first bombshell. I logged into Robert's online banking for that secret credit card. I had deduced his password through careful observation and a bit of guesswork based on his patterns, another chilling realization of how well I knew him and how poorly he knew me. I found the option to pay the balance, and I did. Every single cent of that $30,000, I paid it off from our joint savings account. The account he thought he had drained, but from which I had quietly transferred a safety net in the weeks prior. My own money. I paid his secret debt to his mistress. The satisfaction was perverse, but immense. He wouldn't know it was paid until the next statement, if ever. The bank's investigation would now be complicated by a zero balance, making it harder for him to claim fraud later. Then I did the truly devastating part. I called my divorce lawyer, a tough, seasoned professional named Margaret. I laid out the entire story, presented my meticulously compiled evidence, the secret credit card statements, the transaction logs, the proof of transfers to Lila Dawson, the photos of him with her. Frank had provided me with more recent ones, even more damning. Margaret listened, her face grim. "Anna," she said, "this is extensive. This is not just adultery. This is financial misconduct, potentially fraud against marital assets. This is a clear case." "I want everything," I told her, my voice unwavering. "I want a house, I want full spousal support, I want every penny of my retirement funds protected. And I want him to face consequences. I want the bank to handle him. I want the fraud department to do their job." Margaret nodded. "We can certainly pursue that. By paying off the card, you've complicated his ability to deny liability for the debt, and reporting it as fraud makes it an issue for the bank, not just a marital dispute. It's a clever move. Now let's serve him the papers." The timing was crucial. Robert had a work conference scheduled for the following week, a trip he claimed was vital for his career progression. I knew, thanks to Frank's continued surveillance, that this conference was actually another rendezvous with Lila Dawson in a remote cabin upstate. Perfect. The morning he was supposed to leave, I acted. I didn't wake him. I left a neatly typed note on his pillow, a simple, chilling message. "I know everything. Check your credit card." Then, I quietly took his packed suitcase from the hallway, carried it to the garage, and locked it in a storage locker. I removed his car keys from the hook. I called a locksmith to change the locks on the house and installed a new security system. By the time he woke up, I was gone. I had already checked into a hotel across town, ready to let the chaos unfold. Robert's calls started immediately. Frantic, confused, then angry. "Anna, what the hell is going on? Where are my keys? Where's my suitcase? What did you do to my card?" I didn't answer. I let him stew. I pictured him scrambling, bewildered, realizing his world was imploding. The silence was golden. Then the bank called him. Not me. The fraud department. They had completed their preliminary investigation. They had seen the transfers, the suspicious activity, and now they had questions. Questions about a secret credit card, a significant balance, and why it was suddenly paid off, only to be reported as fraud. This was not a marital dispute anymore. This was a bank investigation into potential criminal activity. Robert, cornered, panicked. He called me again, his voice hoarse with desperation. "Anna, what did you tell them?" "The bank is calling me. They're saying I'm under investigation. This is all your fault. You paid off the card. Why would you do that?" "My money, Robert," I said, my voice calm, almost detached. "It was our money. You stole it. You used it to fund your little escapades. I merely returned what was mine." And then I reported the fraud to the appropriate authorities. That's between you and them now. I'm just watching. You reported it as fraud. Anna, they'll put me in jail. My career, my reputation, my life will be ruined. His voice cracked, a desperate plea. Your life was ruined the moment you decided to betray me, Robert. I countered, the bitterness in my voice undeniable. You think you can just take everything I worked for, lie to me for years, and get away with it? You made your bed. Now lie in it. The bank will handle the rest. I hung up, and I never spoke to him again directly. The aftermath was a whirlwind. The divorce proceedings began. Robert, without access to his accounts, frozen by the bank during their investigation, and with his credit in tatters, was in a precarious position. His company, notified by the bank of the investigation, put him on immediate leave, eventually firing him. His carefully constructed life of deceit crumbled before his eyes. The bank's fraud investigation became a full-blown criminal inquiry when they uncovered further evidence of money laundering and undeclared income from his side dealings, activities I had meticulously documented and presented to my lawyer. He had tried to be too clever, too intricate with his lies. He tried to fight the divorce, to claim I was unstable, vindictive, but my lawyer, Margaret, systematically dismantled his defense with the undeniable evidence. Photos of him and Lila Dawson, hotel receipts, flight manifests, the secret credit card statements, the bank's own fraud report. It was all there, laid bare. Lila Dawson, it turned out, was a grifter, a professional con artist who had targeted Robert, seeing him as an easy mark. She disappeared once the bank accounts were frozen, leaving Robert with nothing but debt and a ruined life. A delicious irony, I thought, that he had been betrayed by his own betrayer. The divorce was finalized quickly. I received the house, the vast majority of our assets, and a significant portion of his remaining liquid assets, which were minimal after his legal fees and the bank's clawbacks. He was left with crippling debt, a criminal record for financial fraud and money laundering, and no job. The bank, in conjunction with federal authorities, pursued criminal charges against him. I heard through the grapevine that he eventually served a short prison sentence and was left financially destitute, unable to secure any meaningful employment. I never looked back. The pain of the betrayal lingers, a phantom ache, a reminder of the naive woman I once was. But it is overshadowed by a fierce sense of survival, of justice, of having reclaimed my life from the wreckage. I sold the house, too many memories tainted by his deceit. I moved to a smaller, cozier place, started volunteering, reconnected with old friends, and found a quiet peace I never knew was possible. My trust in people is fractured, deeply so, but my trust in my own strength, in my own ability to survive and fight, is unbreakable. I sometimes wonder what became of Robert, if he ever reflected on his actions, if he understood the depth of the pain he inflicted. But then I remember the secret credit card, the money sent to Lila Dawson, the cold calculation of his betrayal, and I feel nothing but a detached sense of justice. He thought he could steal my future and disappear. But I made sure he paid a much higher price. I found out my husband had a secret credit card and was sending money to another woman. I paid off the balance, reported it as fraud, and let the bank handle the rest. And in doing so, I not only brought him to justice but also saved myself from a lifetime of being lied to.